Aiden, you see your basic income, universal basic income thing is coming into action.
Through that pension stuff.
Yeah, people are raging though, man.
It's an
People are
interesting move,
raging.
What are
I
your
think it's
thoughts on
because
that,
also
on that
how the
pension move?
I can't hear what you're saying, Aiden.
I said, what are your thoughts on that pension move?
I'm all for universal basic income, and I'm all for coming out the tax. I'm not too sure about the pension thing. I know they're going to add on a 12% of tax. The problem is the track record of South African government to handle tax properly. I think that is the problem. It's like, yes, you like our constitution and all this stuff is on paper. It's brilliant. It's actually good. And I think if you lived in a country where people were taxed like 40, 50%, but healthcare and education and infrastructure and basic services was on a high level, public transport, I don't think anyone would have a problem. But now you have a country with a track record of like crap on basic services, wanting to now operate a whole new thing to get a basic universal income through taxpayers' money, and they haven't proven that they can adequately house people, adequately educate youth, adequately provide basic needs, services, sanitation. And it's just sad because that's what we need. We need a universal basic income, but I just don't think they can justify them being the ones to administer and implement it at this point.
I think it's a good thing though in the long run, because like if you, I mean in terms of for the state itself, because like if the state gets, if a lot of like pensioners, for example, people who retire have their own kind of, have another source of income other than the state, it kind of reduces the state's responsibility, like in terms of social welfare, for example. And I'm just talking about cost to the state, which is I think it's actually a cost saving mechanism that the state is trying to do by introducing that pension move. I don't even know how to describe it. I haven't read enough on it, but yeah. I think it's interesting though.
We should do a deeper episode into that sometime when we'll do our research, but I haven't also really jumped into it.
I think my one worry about that is that pension funds are notoriously insecure in South Africa. So private and like and state, like the James thing, which is not James.
Government
James is the medical
pension fund, GEPS,
GEPS,
GEPF, something.
That is notoriously insecure because it's not just that the money is like lying and accumulating in state coffers and to be disseminated at a later period, but it's like in bonds or in like land bonds, or I don't know, in all sorts of investments. And then
it's being used to generate more money.
And then like 20 years down the line you find out, oh, that was a volatile investment, and like a chunk of your retirement fund is either missing or it didn't accumulate as much as was, promised or whatever. So that's my only concern. Well, my one concern. My other concern would be like something that you mentioning, Lee, which is like the mismanagement of funds, which again is like, I don't think we have the kind of confidence in our government that we need in order to like manage something like this properly. I don't know. I don't have that kind of confidence.
Yeah, people are gonna protest it, like by not they're gonna duck tax. They're gonna make so many loopholes and paper red tape and all these things just to not pay that by any means possible, because the confidence in, is this going to be used for what it's intended to? Because people still waiting for their 350 rand, bro.
Right.
Like, exactly. Like such a minuscule amount But now people are being, oh, whistleblowers are coming out now saying where all the money went for PPE, all these things. All
Yeah.
right. And I just don't see something like that being implemented properly when you have clearly proven you couldn't, in a time of crisis, like it was a health crisis, 500 billion was unlocked. Here's the money, and didn't come from tax, but this was the reserve cash. It's there. Use it. And that wasn't even done properly. So now you're going to ask people to give their money. And I just think it's a bit like, yo, can we at least get some other stuff first? Can we just sort out sanitation, sort out housing, sort out. But I know what Aiden's saying. It's a start, and it relieves in theory, it would relieve more responsibility, would relieve the state of more responsibility. But then back to Wilton saying that is on the premise that that pension is going to grow and be used and be secure when the time comes when people need to use it, so they don't rely on the state. So there's so many moving parts at play, and it requires transparency, it requires accountability, and it requires just the end of like corruption and just managing the things properly.
I think that another thing that they've been trying to do for years, the state has been trying to encourage people to save for retirement for so many years now. I mean, if you think about the introduction of the tax-free savings account first, and then the South African retail savings bonds.
Retail bonds.
Yeah, so there's been this push from the state to say, here's ways of saving money for retirement on your own, right? But I don't think there's been
but what money
attached to that?
You saw the stats, bro.
Firstly, firstly, and secondly, for those that have the money, the state is not connecting any of those conversations to the existing forms of like saving that people do in communities. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like stokvels, like other modes that people already save for the communities. You know what I'm saying? There hasn't been. I don't think there's been a literacy program around those things. Like, okay, I see a retail savings bond. What must I do?
Yeah.
Do I go to the bank? Like on
the literacy.
a very practical level.
Okay, I see
what
what
do
you
I
mean.
do?
Yeah.
Here's a TFSA. Here's a thing that can save you so much. You can basically raise this much money for yourself over time. It's very simple, very easy. But okay, how do I do it?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think that's a big thing.
Yeah. I think like I know exactly what you're saying, but I also, like Lee mentioned, what money, like how much money do people actually have? I know everybody says, put away what you can, put away, minuscule amount if that's all you have. But I don't know, it's concerning for me that that the dialogue is still around like, okay, well, or rather like the responsibility lies with the citizen, the consumer, to be the person to like manufacture a way to have money at the end of the month to put in savings. I think like you have to, before you can even do that, you have to address like historical debt, you have to address colonial debt. I don't know how much, for instance, like over the hundreds of years of colonization, like how much payment was made by the Dutch and the English to South Africa in order to address things like the kind of gaps in wealth that colonialism created, but also like the land theft, the theft of like assets, having all these British and American diamond mines in South Africa and South Africa owning none of them, stuff like that. I think there's like layers that need to be addressed before we can even start thinking about telling people, oh, you need to save this and you need to save that. Just because, like, where are people going to get the money from? Like, people barely have money to feed themselves and to like buy furniture and clothing and stuff like that. And I don't know. That's concerning for me.
And just like the daily thing, like of just needing to get where I need to be today. That's money. fuel prices going up, so taxi price goes up, and public transport the way it is in the state in which it is in South Africa is traumatizing. At the same time, like, there are daily expenses that are unpredictable. You and I, we can budget. Okay, this is how my month goes. I use this for petrol. My medical aid comes off this, and I have my hospital plan. And so, but the ordinary or the average citizen in South Africa, it's day by day. Yeah, some lighty gets sick. Now they come to, okay, we need so much money for the day hospital, must go here, must go there. There's so much unpredictability in the average citizen's life that to form some sort of budget, like the rhetoric goes, is impossible, because your life is day to day. You're a day laborer, you maybe a domestic worker, and you don't have those perks, you don't have those things, and the people you're working for can just say, sorry, next week there's no work, we're going away, you don't need to come in. It's done. It's like, that throws a spanner in the works. So I know what you're saying, Wilton, like the rhetoric of the responsibility of saving, or you can't save yourself out of poverty. I'm sorry. You can't save yourself. You can't save. Helping hands need to come in, and communities do a great job through like stokvels, through all these different things. And I think corporate South Africa or financial South Africa is starting to recognize this. And I've seen a trend in these group savings plans, like official stokvel accounts at certain banks. Now you can buy property with 12 people, because they're starting to recognize that. So I'm hearing my own voice. They're starting to recognize that it's the likelihood of one person being able to do all of this is starting to diminish. And so how do people get by? They recognize that it's through community, through pooling money. So they've kind of made that official and whatever. But once again, the literacy, the educational side around that is missing. And those who take advantage of it are those who probably don't need that. Those platforms and services. But yeah, man.
Now imagine you are retired, you're over 65, and you can't work,
Yeah.
and you don't have an income.
1,800 rand a month.
Or imagine you're in that situation. You don't have a steady income, but you're responsible for like 2 or 4 grandparents. So like this is where that pension question becomes very serious. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, okay, like if you have a pension, if your grandmother has an extra pension, that's a little bit more than the 1,800, or I don't know how much the amount is now. A little bit more. A little bit goes a long way, I guess, in some, you know what I mean, creates that space. It's the same argument around like the universal basic income, I think.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm like too skeptical about the whole thing. I think like, okay, so on the one hand, I think absolutely this is a step in the right direction. But for instance, if we're not also at the same time like proposing a wealth tax on the extremely wealthy in South Africa, at the same time that we're proposing like a kind of a new way of taxing pension funds, then what are we doing? Like, what's the point? What's the purpose of that? I'm also optimistic in the sense that I think that this is an opportunity like to do the kind of like anti-capitalist work that might render a new economic order plausible, or available to folks. I also feel like, like both of you brought up stokvels. I feel like there are different formal economies at play in a place like South Africa, and the ways that they play out are self-organized, self-determined, operating outside of the purview of the state, for instance. And I think we have a lot to learn, especially from these, like, there are so many of these stokvels that are just run by older Black women who are like, I mean, I don't know the literature deeply enough on this issue, but my sense is that these are all, a lot of these stock files are older Black women who have always had to manage the kind of financial balancing act of living close to or below the breadline, or maybe just slightly above the breadline or something, and having the kind of vision to be able to say, okay, we're going to do the stock file, whether it's for like groceries at the end of the year where we can buy in bulk at special prices, or if it's like we're going to stockpile for a piece of land where we can, like grow our own food or whatever the case may be. And I'm just mentioning this because I think we have a lot to learn about like the gap between formal and informal economies from people who are doing stuff like this kind of stockpile organizing that happens. It happens in the state, but it happens despite the state, despite banks, despite um, economic departments and stuff like that. So
I
I
think
think that
also
yeah, like that would be fascinating. I wish I had that skill and discipline. Honestly, like I don't. But anyway, sorry.
formalizing these like accounts, like a stokvel account, the state understands that there's a whole other economy that they were never able to touch or affect or put to work, because that's what you do. The bank says, give me your money. They put that money to work and for themselves, they make money off that money and then whatever they keep, what the profit that they make from that, and that's the fee plus other added fees. So on one hand, they maybe want a piece of that pie. Like, here's a stokvel account, put all your money here, it'll be secure. And they kind of play these kind of fear mongering tactics of like, it's secure, it's you don't keep money in your you don't have to hide the money away or keep it safe, and everyone gets paid out, everything's on the books. That stuff has been done already. And how communities organize themselves, formal South Africa or formal banking South Africa never understood that, because there was nothing there for them. Now that they are realizing like, okay, how do we expand? How do we gain that market? They form these accounts because they now see an opportunity to put that money to work for themselves. And I think we must just be wary of that, because what stokvels also do, and it's besides the fiscal or the monetary value that they gain, there's a sense of community, a sense of understanding, working with people one-to-one. You're not a name on an account somewhere, like you're at the bank. This is meetings that are held. There's empathy that goes into the discussions when there's an emergency and someone wants to draw the money out. And these are how these things are structured. It's not just a cold, calculated thing. There's a sense of community, a sense of trust, a sense of empathy, a sense of acknowledging people's struggles because they are all living it. So if you go to the bank and you say, hey guys, I need to take some of the capital in my house and I need to make it liquid. Oh, sorry, Mr. Bester, you don't qualify for that. They don't understand where I'm coming from. But with a stokvel, you can approach the organizers and be like, hey guys, and there's a deep understanding because you're from the same community. So I think like we shouldn't lose that. We should learn from that, so you're 100% right. There's a whole other economy that is happening, because how can people live with the stats that were just released? Like, if you like, how are people, you shouldn't, but it happens. People are, but that's because of the power of community. It doesn't make sense in formal terms, right? Because it's just each man for himself. This is how much you need to live. No, but they don't calculate community. They don't calculate people helping each other. So
I think that those stats also need to be like, I mean, we need a
statistician
launch or something on that stats. We need someone to come in and explain, like, not explain why, but explain what those stats mean. Remember that we spoke about in a previous
the context.
Spoke about not even the context. We spoke about the absorption rate stat versus the, like, how many people are keeping their jobs.
Yes.
versus the general, like how many of that percentage unemployed
Quality
is
jobs.
university graduates. Yeah, like the financial sector boomed apparently, but every other
Mm-hmm.
sector like plummeted.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing I wanted to say was that like we should be talking about the kind of work that people are doing first and foremost. Like is that like
Casuals or
long term is that sustainable jobs?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think like those are things we need to consider with those stats. Like it's 34.4% is a hell of a lot of percent.
But it's
The
like
percent
it's
is
a
the thing. Like
yeah.
yeah,
sure,
that's almost your pass mark, man.
Maybe rule. Nah, when we were in school,
no.
we had to
Don't
get a
put me
bit,
in with you, yeah, you
we had to
guys.
get a bit more than that.
No,
But yeah.
no,
No, I
no,
meant
but
the pass mark. Sorry, I meant the
the
pass mark. That's almost the pass mark.
yeah, yeah, 34%. That's like it's so close to 40, which is almost half.
the
Four
thing
and
the thing is like whether that statistic is like 20% or 34% or 40%, it's still a depressing statistic. And just to like clarify for anybody who is tuned in up like to this point, is that we're talking about the unemployment rate. Also, I have like my neighbors are like I got Mexican neighbors, Puerto Rican neighbors, Dominican neighbors. So the music, it's Saturday morning, the
oh
music
yeah,
is pumping. So if you hear music, just forgive me. But yeah, like we're talking about the unemployment statistic in South Africa, the youth unemployment statistic in South Africa, and I don't know, it's just if that number can be anything and it will be depressing, you know what I mean? Just thinking
yeah,
about the amount of people in South Africa, and it's and if it drops, that's great, but I think there needs to be other safety nets and stuff also. I know we're talking about like finances and shit, but I also wanted to touch on we haven't like really spoken about COVID much on the show. I think we had like other things planned and stuff like that. But I just saw yesterday that if you guys don't mind me switching pace, unless anybody wants to say anything more.
yeah, all good.
Okay, so thank you.
Why are you asking for permission?
Yeah, I don't wanna like take us away from this very important
Take us
conversation that
away.
we're having, but I did wanna talk about the fact that so in the States at the moment they're talking about like sending out third booster shots, and there's a lot of conversation around the fact that the United States is like doing the booster shots, but they are also hoarding a lot of vaccines and keeping vaccines from poorer countries. Last night I saw they're sending 2 million shots to Pfizer shots to South Africa, which is great. I appreciate that, but that's like a small percentage of what they actually have and what they actually going to be using to give people booster shots, which again, like one of the other things that I saw in relation to booster shots is that it's not actually going to be helpful in relation to Delta variant and possibly new variants. So I don't know. I just wanted to hear like where you guys are at. I know South Africa's been rolling out the vaccines now at a faster rate, and yeah, I just wanted to get your sense.
I got vaccinated last week. I got vaccinated last week.
Oh,
And
such a
that's
sheeple.
I mean that's a good thing. One thing I do want to say though is, and that's a good point you make, Lee. Actually, if I could segue from what Lee said, it's not a very smooth segue, but today's sponsor is. No, I'm joking. There's no sponsor for
Scarpy,
this podcast.
Scarplant.
Fellies. Fellies.
Scarplant Place.
Oh yeah, speaking about sheeple,
Speaking about sheeple, the Chuck
Karoo.
Farm special at Calvinia Place.
No, I wanted to say that mutton is a very good thing to eat. No, that was a very flow joke, and I apologize. Um, no, I wanted to say I got vaccinated, and it was strange for a number of reasons. The first thing is that there was signage up at the Cape Town International Convention Center where I got vaccinated, and the signage was like, "Go back to the things you love."
The
And
new
then,
no, yeah.
the, and then I was thinking later on, like, vaccination doesn't necessarily mean that you are now immune, right? Like you can still catch it and spread it. And so really, I guess, I don't know, not a virologist or someone qualified in medicine, any form of genetics
Aren't
or
you a doctor?
any of that stuff. I'm a doctor. Yeah, Lee.
Oh.
So the people don't need to know that. I'm joking. I'm a doctor, but I can't write prescriptions.
Of archaeology.
I'm a doctor of my mind. Um,
So the messaging you feel is a
but
bit like misleading.
I think it's dishonest and misleading, but I also feel like I guess it's a bigger problem of how we are communicating about the vaccine generally. Because I think what will probably happen is there will need to be a vaccine that prevents infection, and that will be the final death blow for COVID, so to speak. So right now we're getting a vaccine that prevents serious illness, right? But it doesn't
Yeah.
prevent infection. So we can
Mhm.
still get it, we can still contract COVID and then spread it, right? Even though you have the vaccine, like the Pfizer or the Moderna or all that other stuff. And I know in the beginning, like close to the end of last year, I think there was something like 160 or 170 vaccines in development. So that's, I mean, that's good news. But I think that, like, I think that's something that needs to change. Like, we need to have maybe like regular things on the radio about what the vaccine actually is. The other day, I
Mhm.
was talking to people and I was saying, yeah, you know, the vaccine is actually a weakened version of the virus. And then I realized actually I'm talking complete cuck. Like the mRNA virus is not a weakened version of the virus because that's how traditional viruses work. It's actually a spike protein
The
and some
Mhm.
other stuff I don't know
The
anything
Sinopharm
about.
one is one
Oh, okay.
is a weekend,
Po-
a
point
dormant
of the
or
matter is that there's a lot of miscommunication going on.
Mhm.
There's also a lot of how can I put it? Um, I think people should be allowed to have doubts about the vaccine, like in terms of having conversations about what it means for them and why they feel, you know, they shouldn't be taking it for whatever reason. Um, but those concerns also need to be aired within the fact that, like, okay, we need to get out of this pandemic.
Yeah.
Do you know what I
I
mean?
don't
Like,
think there's
we are in
time
the
for that.
okay, but
No,
maybe
honestly,
what I
like
mean is, no, but what I mean is, I think there's a lot of, um, for lack of a better term, I think there's a lot of bullying going on around communication of the vaccine. That's not helping anybody. That's actually ostracizing people and pushing people away. And I can see both of your faces are like,
no,
what
I
the fuck
understand
is
what
this?
you
But I
mean.
thought,
I
No,
get it.
I completely understand, but yeah.
I'm just because my thing is like, how do you bring those people in who are doubtful
Yeah.
So
without
this
telling
is
them
so
like, you know what I'm saying?
yeah. So this is the thing, like about the about the bullying and stuff. Where I completely agree with you is that, for instance, like here in the States, there's a lot of. I don't think you can lump in all the
The
people who
hesitancy.
are
Yeah.
all the people who are hesitant about the vaccine into one group and say these are all anti-vaxxers, they are all bad, and therefore, we must ostracize them. I think there's there people of color who have an extreme reaction often to like new medical things because of the history of the United States and medicine and its relationship with black people, brown people, and stuff like that. And so like in that sense, I agree that like we must be careful not to ostracize people who are hesitant or nervous. We must find ways of communicating with folks. But on the other side, I also agree with Lee in that I don't know if there's like always time for all of that, because some people are engaging in like vast conspiracy theories. So not just like the vaccine is dangerous, or it's the misconception that the vaccine is untested, even though it's been the mRNA sequencing has been done for I think over a decade or something, and it's just being applied to this now. I yeah, I get nervous when we like we give audience on like on public platforms and stuff to people
No,
who are
that
just
is definitely
like
so. Yeah.
purposefully spreading misinformation. And then yeah, on the other hand, I have of course complete empathy with certain groups of people.
I also think
I
it's also like they not like people's doubts are not consistent in medicine. Like you spoke about, like that's why if kids don't get the MMR vaccine for mumps, measles, and rubella, you can still get it. It doesn't prevent, like there were communities in, was it Minnesota, Wilton, um, I think it was immigrant community. So yeah, yeah,
Somali communities
where they convince these
who
people not to take it,
yes, yes,
they will get it. You saw polio. The viruses, these viruses are around. It doesn't, they are around, and if you're not protected against it, you're gonna get infected. So it doesn't eradicate the virus. It just stops you from getting it and spreading it. So these things are around. That's why you can't go to uncontacted tribes and go give clothing. Like that's happened, and they died because
mm,
now I just think the consistency with doubts is it's not consistent. People are choosing now what to doubt and what not to doubt. And they will because there's so much hype around the topic that it clouds, like people will take medicine and they will, like the doctor's like, yeah, here's a script for this, take this, you know like when Viagra came out, when Pfizer came out with Viagra, it was new. No one took it. People took it without, like, not, there was heavy side effects, people having heart attacks. you know it's the same company
that's
now. Like people went for it without, let me first do education about, no, because i think I think there's a cognitive bias that goes on with these things, and it is multi-layered, as Walton says, and you can't pull all people in. But we also need to do better with educating. But in time of crisis, like we can't even educate our kids. We can't even agree on what should be taught in schools. We can't even agree on how kids should go to school, masks or no masks. Like, how are we going to agree what information to give? Like, like
I mean
critical race theory, we can't
I
even agree like that needs to be
yeah.
done. So now
but
you're gonna agree, like, you know what I mean?
oh,
So
sorry, Aiden, bro.
No, I just wanted to say I think like there are some people that are far gone. Like and
Right.
sometimes you must just
true,
accept that those
true.
people are far
If
gone, and
someone's asking for,
you can
yeah,
only extend the bridge so far across the massive abyss that is
Yes.
conspiracy theory. But I'm talking about people who have, like, for example, like people who have heart conditions that they don't know what the vaccine is going to do for their heart condition, or like people with endometriosis,
yeah,
who get like severe blood clotting. There's some
Mm,
cases of severe blood clotting upon getting the vaccine, and
yeah.
there, like, vaccine hesitancy is understandable.
yeah.
So how do you communicate in those kind of circumstances? Do you understand? Like, how do you
Yeah.
not convince someone, but I guess ensure some sort of, at least like, allay some of those fears. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
That's my like, how do you? But it is a problem now in this age of misinformation. I guess
Can I just
people are,
say,
you know.
yeah. Well, I just want to say also, I agree completely. Brown University, I don't even care to name them. Fuck them. They are like full on forcing everybody to come onto campus. Everybody's gonna be in person. They're having in-person events. It's orientation now. I was supposed to go to some like orientation lunch thing 2 days ago. I was like, hell no. Like sent my anxiety through the roof because out of every one of these events, someone catches COVID, and I'm just like, like, why are you so forceful about bringing every single person back onto campus if that is not absolutely necessary? And I know the issue globally of like lack of access to internet and stuff like that, but that it's an issue in the States, but it's not as big an issue as it is, for instance, in South Africa. And I think a place like Brown should be investing in ways to provide access to those students who don't have access. So like if you don't have an internet connection, be like, you know, we're gonna work out a deal with the company to give you internet for the semester or something like that. They have the money, but they are so focused on forcing everybody to come back in person. You know, the irony is that I am going to be a teaching assistant for a course this semester on um, like health inequality.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thanks. Uh, and this woman who is teaching the course is amazing, Landy Brown, and but she is also an older person who has you know, pre-existing conditions, but also the risk of catching the virus increases the older you get. And they are forcing this woman who is teaching about health inequality to go and teach a course in the time of a mass pandemic. And I just feel like the logics behind these major decisions that are being made is like, it's really gross, bruh. It's so like they playing with people's lives. I feel like I know we all want to be back in person. We all want to be able to hug our friends random and have dinners and shit like that. And it's coming on, you know, like a year and a half now in the States that the virus has been a major issue. I I understand we all have these concerns globally that we want to be back together. We are social animals. That is just like, you know, for the most part, we are social animals and we need each other to survive. But like, what's the point if we all, if so many of us are going to catch the virus and like not, you know,
I think
this like long COVID and all of these things, you know, all the shit is like, are these corporations thinking about this? These corporations that want to fine people for who are not coming into the office or dock their pay or decrease their paycheck at the end of the month or something like that. You know, there's conversations about that happening at major corporations like Apple and Google, where a large number of their younger staff are like, now we can do this at home. Let us do this at home. And they are, you know, drawing punitive measures against them. Sorry, Lee.
I think it's this need and this rush to put this flag of victory in the ground to showcase your ability as a corporation to pivot, get out of crisis. It's all these things that the same thing happened in the financial crisis of 2008, of this rush to show profits, to show that, hey, we came out of it, to have it as a notch under your belt as a corporation. It's this competitive nature that people have, and companies, also organizations have. Like, you can't compete in business. I feel like businesses are like, you can say we're the best tech company in the state. What are the metrics being used in that? How are you the best? Over what time? Because you were fucked up in 1938 when you guys wouldn't employ any black people, but now you all woke. Like, so like, there's no best.
Mm-hmm.
So there's this thing of beating it. And we don't have no concept of this thing of time and a virus and what it takes and how long it takes to get over this thing properly. And it's this thing of being dislocated with what we knew and how things are, and this need to go back to that, because if we don't, then what? Like, it's but it's we like, there's this, I know, yeah, like there's some, I'm not going to mention names. There's people whose bosses or the organization, they just want people back in office.
Yeah.
When clearly, but it's micromanagement. It's that whole story of micromanagement power. The job can be done more productively at home. Some organizations are starting to see that, and they have like remote only positions available, and don't work on a Thursday and all these things, because they've been able to do, you're not sitting in 2-hour traffic. You're just well balanced overall. But the older institutions, no, bro, because they can't justify the pay. They can't get away with, like, they need to justify why they charge so much fees. Like at Brown, like they probably need to justify the payment of directors and the payment of this. We need to keep the lawns trimmed. We need to keep the cleaning.
Yep.
Like, no, there's no one coming in as often. We don't need so much cleaning. All these things were justified once upon a time. Now it's becoming more difficult to justify monthly bills. Like, hey, why are so many people on this payroll who, you're not doing anything? Most of these people are commuting from home. Working from home. So it's a scary thought, but there's a lot of things at play, I suppose.
Yeah. I also think so many of these institutions are, and I'm talking specifically about like Ivy League universities in the States, are actually more obsolete than they think. And so I think it's like a panic response on their part to like get people to come back on campus. Because the other thing is like a place like Brown relies so heavily on its undergrad population for funds. So as a PhD, your study is generally like paid on fellowship or something like that. Undergrads, pay like parents' money. Rich parents also do fundraising for the schools and all of that stuff. Bring prestige and all that. So to not have them on campus, to not have that student body on campus is like a massive blow to to their bottom line. But I genuinely feel like this the pandemic is really showing how obsolete a lot of parts of these institutions are. Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like they have no response for class and race, for instance, during this pandemic. They have no consideration of people living in rural America or like inner cities where things are more difficult. They have no conception of that in their response to the pandemic. So it's just yeah,
No empathy, man. Like, I
no
don't know.
empathy.
Did you
I don't
guys
know.
watch that? Did you guys watch that video I sent you guys about the invention of individual responsibility?
I
In the
didn't
YouTube
watch the
video.
whole thing. But what do you
Well, it
want to
was
say
quite
about it?
long. But I think like what we've seen in the last 2 years is a real hardening of that principle of like responsibility, but the responsibility in the individual. Like for now, it's like we're in the cold front here in Cape Town, and it's quite hectic. Like I think
So you guys got a lot of
it was
snow,
like
huh?
6 degrees. Yeah, it was like 6 degrees the
Jesus.
other day, like which is cold, like which is cold for Cape Town. Like it's
Yes.
it's really really cold for Cape Town. And the day before the cold front, the city of Cape Town removed a bunch of houseless people here close to Greenpoint, Sea Point area. Broke down the tents and things they were staying in, and basically just displaced them illegally. Um, and a lot of the conversations that I've sort of heard over the past few days around it has been about, it's not like it's their fault. Like they should pull themselves up by their bootstraps and they should help themselves and they should, you know, do something about this situation. And the same kind of conversations are happening around unemployment in this country. And I think more and more with the pandemic now as well, when there is a crisis, there is also that hardening of that individualism. Like, the
Yeah.
Yeah.
individual, like you have to sort your, like you are responsible
I
for
like.
yourself.
I'm gonna
And
sort
yes, to a
myself
certain
out.
degree, yes, to a certain degree you are, but in the moment of crisis, like how has humanity ever worked through any of its moments of crisis is through community, like by working together. That's been basically why we are the most dominant species on this
That's why we beat the Neanderthals,
planet. Yeah. That's how we beat the
Shut
Neanderthals. That's how we
shut the fuck
domesticated
up.
dogs
I
and
mean,
cats.
serious. Fuck you, Wilson. We
There's still
socialized.
there's
We
still
traded.
Neanderthals out in the world, okay?
Look at this.
We
This
didn't
is the
beat
thing. There's
anything.
so many NGOs now that suffered in the last 2 years because funders just said, "Hey, hold up now. It's crisis mode. We need to pull in for next couple of months." Sorry. Um, and that's a trend that's been happening. I mean, I spoke to T as well, like same story with them, and like everyone is just holding fast because there's this fear now. Hey, there's not much going around. That I have, let me just hold on. and let me just see what happens because I might need it for myself.
Mm.
Individualism, bro. Individualism, like we can't progress with individualism. We can't progress as a species, as a society. It will not. It won't take us further. It never has, and our biggest strength and why we got here was through building a society based on social values, social shared morality or moral views. Apart from religion and those beliefs, just like we kind of know what needs to be done. We might not admit it, we might not like it, but I think it's come so innate to us. Like, and I was having this discussion with someone, like we were talking about morality and where does morality come from and all that. But I feel like, and I'm gonna go this route, like evolution gave us this, it gave us morality because we realized that in order to survive as a species, we need to be socially we need to live within a society that is bigger than our own individual wants and beliefs. And if things were getting so bad, like we wouldn't see moral acceptance of things that were fringed and frowned and illegal 100 years ago. We realized that we need to progress with our, like, it's like same-sex marriage, interracial marriage, women's rights. These things have progressed. Our models have changed, not because we felt like, oh, it's time, but we know somewhere inside of us that it needs to change because we cannot survive the way we did. Our thoughts, how the world's thinking was 200, 400 years ago, it was not sustainable. Slavery was never sustainable. Like, you need to, and sometimes these things break out, but they never get put back in. It's not like slaves are free. Okay, now we fight. 15 years later, slavery is back in. No, once it's out, once these things are out, generally they stay out. You know, they like, oh shit, we're moving on. So individualism, I just think that capitalism really pushes individualism because it feeds it. But then also capitalism is not sustainable. So those two can go and marry each other and live happily. But that's just where, I don't know what you guys think. My thoughts kind of went there. It's not any,
No,
not,
that's
nothing
fine.
that I read or anything, but I was just thinking like,
Yeah.
there's something in it that we need to kind of pull together. We have to.
Yeah.
And our next thing will probably be like climate crisis and all that, because that shit's getting whack.
Oh God,
That shit's
bruh.
getting
real.
No, wait,
Like,
that shit's getting whack.
Fuck it.
California's burning, bruh. Like they have incarcerated people as firefighters. Like, but you know what? This is one town that is evacuating, but they left the prisoners, bruh.
Bruh.
So this article.
Yeah.
You can't make this shit
Aiden.
up. Sorry.
Yeah.
No, there was an article I read where the person was saying, like, it's not a matter of discussing how bad things are now. Like, it's not a matter of discussing like if we're gonna get out of the shithole we put ourselves in. The point now is we basically need to talk about assisted suicide right now. Like, that's the kind of like metaphor. Like, basically, like, it's like, okay, what's the damage control now?
Yeah.
It's like, shit's gonna go south. Like, we need to just decide how are we gonna go south? Because yeah, I mean, south is also a bad metaphor because the world is a globe and can be seen from any perspective. So why would you have? Anyway, but
anyway,
the matter is, yeah, that's all I want to add.
I think we need to stop there so that we can keep this conversation for the next time. And I know, all of us have things to do.
But thanks for listening to us, those who listen. We're not running away. We do have things to do, which is prepare for the next episode.
Exactly. So on your reading list for next time is materials on racial capitalism, i.e. the relationship between the end of the world, racism, and capitalism. Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at both of those are JXC Podcast, or on Facebook, Jelly and Custard. And yeah, we'll be sharing clips, I don't know, articles, whatever things that come up, we'll be sharing on those platforms. And yeah, like Lee said, thank you for listening first. Cheers, guys.
And good night.
Cheers.